Hello, geniuses. Here we go. So, pretty intense. So I'm just going to get right into it. This is our destination. We're talking about literary analysis today. This is like a overview of literary analysis. It's absolutely necessary in order, if you're going to write a literary analysis, which you are tomorrow, you need to understand what that is, how that works, and like how you put all the pieces together. This is all the pieces. We're going to put them together. I've got some of my favorite colors, and we're going to get right into it. So, literary analysis. How do you spell it? That's what everybody wants to know. Well, I'll start with that. Literary analysis. L-I-T-E-R-A-R-Y-A-N-A-L-Y. Literary analysis. And so, what is a literary analysis? Well, my top line, like the first thing I want to talk about is this. Come right out of here. So what a literary analysis is an in-depth look at what something means, and I'll talk more about what that something is, what something means, and how it works. So I got slash here, how it works. Let's put that in a red box because it's crucial. I hope you've got your favorite colors with you. Your colors don't have to be the same as mine, but it's good if you have different colors because, I mean, do I even need to explain why? Nah. So a literary analysis is an in-depth look at what something means. Something is going to be a literary work, and I got to get an assumption here that I am making. And if you're going to write a literary analysis that's any good, you're going to make the same assumption. An assumption is something that you take before I even start writing anything, I believe this. That's before you start doing anything, or like at the very beginning of the process, that's what an assumption is. I have this assumption. I'm assuming that literary works, which would include things like novels, poems, and I have a very broad definition of what a literary work, like rap lyrics, that's a literary work. Sometimes we would call these texts, but right now I'm going to use the phrase literary works. Literary works offer, that means they give us, the reader, something of value. You know, it's like if you're writing a literary analysis and you're like, I don't like to read, I don't really see too much point in it. Well, that's going to be a tough situation. You're going to have a hard time writing something that's meaningful unless you see what you're doing as an examination of something that actually has value. So something of value, something worthy of careful consideration, and formal, because a literary analysis can be quite formal, formal analysis. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit right after I give it a nice, let's go with blue. I'm going to give it a nice little blue box. I'm going to give it a solid blue box. Why solid blue? Because I used a little dotted box on my last one. But I'm going to underline that word assumption. So a couple things that I need to unpack. One of them is this phrase, literary works. And I got into that a little bit when I said like rap lyrics are literary works in my estimation, but in others they might not be. So if you're going to talk about something that's called a literary work, you got to realize at the outset, like right at the beginning, at the base, that you have questions like, well, which ones? Like comic books? What about like comic books that come inside of baseball? Oh, they don't have baseball gum, baseball cards? I don't know. Who decides? Like, who gets to decide that Shakespeare, oh yeah, we're going to study that. But like the latest, Twilight, No, not Twilight. So we're not going to talk about that. That's not worth our time. No way. Oh, that new, that new rap album that y'all listen to. We don't need to study that. So those decisions are made like through lenses. They have to do with ideology, and they have to do with power. And if anybody else tells you any different, they're lying. They're not lying. They might just be confused or mistaken. Okay, so I wanted to get that out there. Next thing I want to get out there is that when I say like something of value, I'm going to underline this phrase, something. So the something, like what is this something I'm talking about? The something of value, something worthy of careful consideration. What are these somethings? Like what are the somethings of value that might be contained in a literary work? Well, it could be something. I'm going to give you a lot of ... abouts. It could be something about human nature. In other words, this rap album says something about the way that human beings work and the way that human beings think about things that's valuable or interesting or deserves further careful study. Could be in a rap album. Could be in a Kendrick Lamar album. It's just think about human nature. Also in a Kendrick Lamar album, you could find something valuable about politics. You could also find something valuable about politics in a novel that was written in 1813. So I'm going to give you a bunch of possibilities here. These are possible things. There could be valuable information or valuable understanding about justice. You could have some valuable information about relationships, about like the way that human beings work together. Parent-child relationship, maybe a romantic relationship, maybe like a teacher relationship or like a mentor. Think about who Yoda was to Luke Skywalker. Look at this. This is special effects. We're going behind the other ones to get the arrows down here. You didn't see that coming, did you? How about history? And so if you're thinking about the 14 short stories that we've just read, hopefully in your mind you're going like, yeah, maybe there was something about human nature and offloading for Mrs. Schwartz. Or, wow, relationships. Maybe there was something about relationships that was in that Ernest Hemingway story we read. Maybe you thought that was valuable, or maybe you didn't. And in literary analysis, you get to examine what you feel is most valuable. That'll be something I start talking about in a few minutes. About language. About like the nature of language itself. What about literary analysis and like nonfiction? What about like David Foster Wallace? He said some things about language. If we do an analysis of his thinking on language or like an essay that he wrote, are we doing a literary analysis? Well, which one? What's a literary work and who decides? People have decided that David Foster Wallace's fiction and nonfiction is worthy of deeper study and investigation. I think it is. What about about culture? And how so all of these abouts are potentially quite complex. And that's why writers do what they do, is to examine these things. And there's something about writers, well, you can decide which writers are worth trusting, whose pictures of how people interact are most valuable. And hopefully you've found some over the years that you say, yeah, this woman knows what she's talking about, Sandra Cisneros, when it comes to culture, cultural identity, bicultural identity, that transition between living in one culture, moving into another culture. Or we have your technology. Maybe in reading Ray Bradbury, you go, yeah, this dude is like, he's got some insights about technology that maybe we need to really pay attention to. Let's see. I think I got everything I thought that I would have. I did have one more here, and this is like very broad. So you can also look at I got politics, like systems, like institutions, like economics, for example, is a system. Capitalism is a system. Communism, socialisms. So I'm just going to say systems. Oh, I should say systems and isms. What about religion? What about death? All those things are possible. So, assumption, literary works, which, what does that mean? Really depends on who you're asking. Offer us something of value, something worthy of careful consideration and formal analysis with respect to some, all, others. You can tell that there's a lot more of these than the ones that I just mentioned right here. So that's kind of like step one. So you can have like a step one together on one line. Double line, look out. This is the second thing that you need to consider when you're examining or thinking about literary analysis. And the second thing is this. In literary analysis. And this is the good part, maybe? It's a good part for me. In literary analysis, analysis, comma, in literary analysis, you, the writer, the person I'm speaking to right now, you have the power. You have the power to focus your intellect. And that's where I get really excited about this kind of stuff, because reading high level literary works, really valuable, complex texts, it's an intellectual challenge. I'm still intellectually challenged by the works that I've selected for us to examine for this class, because I'm the luckiest guy in the world and I get to teach this class. So in literary analysis, you have the power to focus your intellect on what matters most to you. To say something. To say something meaningful. Meaningful. In conjunction, which means working with. So you get to take your intellect and tie your intellect together, to merge your intellect, in effect, working in conjunction with an author. And that is pretty cool. You get to team up with that author, often by drawing out / examining a theme. Theme is what it's all about, that you have interpreted in the work. So this is going to get a box, but it's a different kind of box. I like to do boxes like these for something else. I'm going to get something in here. It's an important thing. Mumble, mumble, mumble. So that's kind of the first half of what I want to get into. And so I'm going to get some lines right here. And then I'm going to make this box look a little bit more special by making it a little more purple. More purple, more special. Color of royalty. I'm going to make this literary analysis double arrow red. Color of blood. And I also want to, in theme. So an important thing to recognize with theme, notice I said theme that you have interpreted. So that's where you and the author come together in a really important way, is in what you see, what you perceive as the theme. So I want to talk about that in a couple different ways. First one is that there are dozens, if not dozens of different possible themes in literary works. And they really depend on what you see, and in and I'll just do this diagram here. So what do I mean by that? Possible themes. Well, every work has what we could understand as a subject. The answer to the question, what is it about? So the subject is what, on a very basic level, like what is the story about? So Little Red Riding Hood is about a girl who is going through the woods. And so what's the subject? I don't know, a girl getting eaten, or did she get eaten? I don't know, whatever happens. But, that's the subject. But the theme is a step beyond that. And this is where you come in, because this is your work as a reader, as an understander, as someone who takes literature seriously, is that you say, okay, so if Little Red Riding Hood, the subject is childhood innocence, right? Because it's a little girl, she's doing some stuff, she's trying to, or kindness. You could say the subject is kindness, because she was trying to bring her grandmother some snacks or something like that. I don't know. So if that's the subject, well, what is the author saying? And I probably said this before. You probably heard me say this before. What is the author saying about that subject? So if the subject is like, it's about childhood innocence, she wanted to do something and she was in the woods and she didn't know about wolves. Oh, so what is the author saying about that subject of innocence? You could get eaten, innocence become the victim. Innocence and victimhood are related. So that's how that works. And that's what we call the theme. And that is what you are going to focus on in any literary analysis. There's going to be an examination of a theme, of a possible theme that you have interpreted through your work. Which brings us to, what are we looking for in works? When we look for a work and we're thinking about, what's really going on? What themes are important? How does it matter? I'm just going to write these out and talk through them. But this would be a great portion for you to fast forward if you wanted to, because I'm just going to write these down. 7 concepts. Identity. These are where the meaning comes, culture. And you can see how these relate to those. Identity, culture, creativity. Communication. These are ways to understand what's going on in a work, in a piece of literature. So you could examine a Kendrick Lamar album with respect to identity and say, what is he saying about the essential nature of human beings, more specifically from the culture about which he is an expert and is speaking to and speaking for. Communication, perspective, but also just humans in general. Perspective. These are our 7 concepts. We've seen these before. Transformation. And if it's a good work, you could probably talk about all of these. With so Kendrick Lamar, transformation, sure. Representation, big time. What about novels like a novel by George Saunders? Are these there? Identity, culture, creativity? Yeah, they're there. And so what did we say is a literary analysis? It's you deciding with your intellect what is worthy of focus in the work. What aspect of the work is worthy of your focus? That's where these 7 concepts come into play. That makes sense, right? We also have, for this class, what's important is we have 5 fields of inquiry. 5 fields of inquiry are also related to our 7 concepts, but they're slightly different. And now we're at 19 minutes, so definitely fast forward this, probably, maybe, because it's probably going to stretch to 27, 28 minutes. 5 fields of inquiry we've got, but you can just copy these in. People have done that before. It's happened. Culture, identity. So you can see how this incorporates 2 of the 7 concepts. They're just other lenses. These right here, I'm going to draw some glasses up around here. Whoop, these are glasses. Glasses are easy to draw, right? You just kind of do it like this, and you got a little thing out there. Those are not good glasses. I could have done that better, but, I don't know maybe this goes this way. Glasses. Let me just help everybody out here. Glasses. So these are different ways to view a work. So I'm going to put on glasses. So each of these, 7 concepts, 5 fields of inquiry, and community. Let's go right. Com for community. Beliefs, values, and educations. Beliefs, values, and education. Politics, power. And justice. Art, creativity, imagination. And then science, technology, and nature. Science, tech, nature. So these are they're different overarching ways to look into a work to find the values that are the most meaningful to you. Because when you create a literary analysis, which you will be doing today, tomorrow, and the next day, is what you do is I got some clouds here. And these are 4 related clouds. So I'm just going to draw them. So they're about the same size. We got one of these clouds over here, and we got a double arrow going this way. We got another cloud right here. Right there. And we got another cloud right here. Another cloud right here. And double arrow right here. And so this should look familiar because this is the subject and the theme. Sorry about that theme. That's not how I like to do my things. I'll just write it in red. Theme. All right, so we got a subject and theme, and then we have a topic and a thesis. And so this is the part that you're actually gonna fill this in. You're gonna write some ideas here in these sections right here for your literary analysis. So of the stories that we have read, what subject is most interesting to you? So you might probably start by looking at a specific story, although you could look at 2. And what kind of theme do you see coming from that? So what is the author saying about that subject? And then, so if we look at it like this, this is what we have. This is the work. This is what you have read. And this over here is your work. This is the essay that you are going to write. So in the work that the author creates, there's a subject and there's a theme that you have found. In your work, there's a topic that is very interesting to you. You should write about what is interesting to you. Identity, culture, creativity, somewhere in here. Beliefs, values, education, politics, power. Somewhere in all of this, there's something that you're really interested in. And there's probably a story that was meaningful to you with respect to one of these. That's the beginning of a literary analysis. Because in a literary analysis, what you do is you bring your understanding together with the author's understanding, and you create, by a topic, you establish a topic and a thesis that relates to the specific work and what you believe the work, what truth you believe the work is representing about politics, about human nature, about language, culture, identity. All of these are very meaningful areas that are worthy of investigation and careful thought and examination. So your thesis is going to kind of be like a thesis. You break a thesis down. A thesis is like a statement usually, but it's also like it's an argument. It's if the author created in a creative act that's inspired, that is saying something meaningful about humans and the universe and how we interact, et cetera, the author creates a work. What you create is a thesis that has to do with one of these topics, one of these concepts or the work, and your thesis is going to have some kind of a what is going on, and it's also going to have some kind of a how. And the what and the how work together for you to convince your reader, prove to your reader that you're right, that you're correct, that what you're examining really is in the story, and that the way that the author treats the subject does surface a theme that says something deep and true about humanity or technology or power or language. So the how, this is why we do things like understanding how figurative language works, so that we can get to a deeper understanding of what the work is trying to communicate about something meaningful to humans. So your how might include an examination of metaphors or symbols that are used in the story. You might look at the language in the story. You're going to zero in on certain aspects of the story, or the structure of the story, or the plot, or like the narrator, or this narrative style, narrative techniques, we could call it. You might look at the emotional aspects of the story. You might look at things like setting, or an irony that's present in the story. You might look at things like juxtaposition and how that's used as a technique, or ambiguity. And then, like, so your topic is something you care about, something that is meaningful to you, that you think is present in the story. You develop a thesis that's like that you're offering that up to the reader, your reader, as something that is true. And so all of this, as you can tell at this point, this is a lot of thinking. It is a lot of thinking on your part. And because it's a lot of thinking, and because it's significant and meaningful thinking about things that matter, perhaps the things that matter the most, perhaps the most important thinking about human nature. So I'm going to write here, this is significant / meaningful thinking. Your thinking. And I'm also going to, so this is kind of like the final concluding statement here. Yay! So if we're going to call this a literary analysis essay, which we are, because that's what's going on right now, there's a couple things you need to know about literary analysis essay. First of all, you want to create a persuasive argument. You're creating a persuasive argument that does two things, so it has two main objectives. Number one is that, like, your topic thesis is worthy of, like, investigation. It's important to you. Prove to your audience that it's important to everyone, or that it should be important to them. And the second thing that you're arguing is that your interpretation is right. Your interpretation is right, which is why you have to have a good understanding of things like how fiction works. Your interpretation is right. Those are two things that you're doing. Also, because you have a lot of thinking, and because it's significant, meaningful thinking, you're going to have in this particular kind of writing, you're going to have a high level of formality in organization, and like bringing the reader through your ideas. Organization, because it's complicated. You're going to have to use precise language because it's complicated. Precise language. Yeah, did I spell that right? Yeah, of course I did. Precise language. And you're going to have to learn how to, like, effectively bring together you and your words and the author's words. In other words, like evidence. It's evidence-based. It's an evidence-based act of interpretation. And so it's quite a formal enterprise, because we take this stuff seriously. Because we're talking about things like justice, injustice, power. Like, these are really important things for humans. All of this stuff is extremely important for humans. So if you're going to say something meaningful, you're going to have to bring out your very, very best, most skillful version of your language in order to do that. So Your job now is to figure out which of the 14 stories are worthy of your attention, which subjects within those stories are examined by the author in a way that brings out a theme that you see, which, remember, is a statement about or some kind of an idea about the subject. And then you have a topic. Now you have a topic for your essay. Your topic might be creativity in the 20th century and technology. So you might combine two of these and have, so you could look at a story like The Veldt, and what does The Veldt have to do with technology and creativity? Or creativity is technology is over here. So you can combine these in any way. The most important thing is that you're bringing out your A game to say something that you think is very meaningful. And then you structure your essay in such a way that you're examining the how in the story that the theme is brought up. And the theme is what the author has presented for possible interpretation. And your thesis is a statement that, yes, that is a theme. And this is where we see it and how it works. So good luck with your writing. It's complicated. It'll be all right.